Okay, the show opens up with Jordan tapping out on day 19, and then the show moves 2 days earlier to day 17, and it goes to Clay. Clay wakes, tells us about a dream that he had with Joe Rogan. It's kind of funny. You guys got to go back and watch that. But he starts the day by making a fish net. Long handle, big old fish net for focusing on fishing. Okay, so he focuses on fishing that day with the net, and nothing gets skunked. All right, then the show moves on to Michelle. Michelle gathers some freshwater snails down at the lake, cooks them and eats them in a stew, and she tells us that there's not much meat on there, but they're pretty crunchy with a lot of grit. The later that day, she focuses on making a fish basket, talks about winning the money, and then later that day she puts the basket into the lake. All right, day 17 now, show goes to Matt. Matt takes Chad to go fishing. Chad gets a bite. Matt gets a bite, and oh wait, it's a snag. So Matt's got to strip down to his boxers, wade out in the lake, and untangle that snag because he doesn't want to lose that fishing rig. But good on Matt. After that, he stays at it and he catches a small rainbow trout. And he goes back to the shelter, makes a fish stew, talks about meditation, and talks about how he misses his wife. Okay, day 18 now. The show goes to Biko. It shows Biko working on completing that troll shiv, that knife that he made out of that long rusty nail. Okay, he takes some stainless steel wire and he makes a little guard for his hand. But he tells us that he's very disheartened about not catching any fish. So he works on making a fish basket. And then he hears a couple grizzly bears down on the shoreline. Luckily, he says that they're grizzly cubs, but he deploys that bear banger, a little bit of that bear banger, and then he tells us that he's got shoreline PTSD. Okay, now we are at day 19. The show goes to Michelle. Michelle makes a real nice cook shelter separate from her sleeping quarters. She's feeling super sick. She's still finding lots of edibles. She cooks some fireweed. And, excuse me, then she gives us a confession about that salt. And she tells us what she's been doing. She tells us she's been eating her own mucus to try to conserve salt. So good on Michelle. Later that day, she goes down to check that fish basket that she deployed, and she finds that it's been washed ashore, and it's been taken apart. She's very disappointed. All right, the show goes on to day 20 now, goes to Nate. Nate shows us his gigantic mustache, and he whips that thing into a handlebar. Kind of funny. Nate focuses on remedying his sleep situation. He's been waking up with shooting pains going down his leg. So he found about 4 foot of rope on the beach, and good on Nate, he makes a nice suspension bed. He tries it out in a shelter, and boy does it feel comfortable. Okay, show now switches over to Matt, and we see Matt climbing up 40 feet in a spruce tree just to get a better look of the lake. All right, then he goes foraging. He finds some long grasses for his shelter. He says there's some cool breeze, cold wind is getting in the shelter. He wants to fortify it and seal it up a little more. He finds an area with some nice long grasses, and then all of a sudden he gets attacked by these hornets. He gets into a hornet's nest. He gets stung a couple times. Things are not going good for Matt. Later that night in his shelter, he's talking to the camera and he's venting a little bit, we should say, about how he's out there entertaining us while we're sitting at home eating our chips and our popcorn. It was kind of funny. Okay, day 21, 7 people remain. The show goes back to Clay. He sets out with a bow and arrow to go deer hunting. He's very frustrated with the fishing, so he wants to focus on getting a deer. He finds a real nice area with a bunch of willows and alders in the area, and he finds some fresh deer sign, but he doesn't want to spook them. He doesn't see anything. He thinks they're in the area. He doesn't want to spook them, but he doesn't know where he is. So he decides to go back to the shelter, figure out a nice trail to the area, and hunt it another day. Okay, day 22 now. 6 people remain after Matt tapped out, and the show goes to Clay. Clay wakes, he gets his bow and arrow, and he goes back to that spot that he found where he saw that deer sign. And today he finds more fresh deer sign. He touches it, rubs it, it's super fresh sign. And then we see Clay spots a buck. A buck is staring right at Clay. Clay freezes, waits him out, waits for the deer to go behind a tree, Clay drops to his knees, pulls an arrow. We see Clay shoot an arrow, and then you know how the show does it. It goes blank, goes black. Okay, show goes black. You know how they do it. And then Alone Season 8 goes to 3 days after the tap out of Michelle, and they conduct the interview with Michelle. The show ends with Michelle's interview, and oh my goodness, we don't know where that arrow went that Clay shot. So that's the end of episode 5, titled The Buck. I'm thinking we're going to see that buck, Clay's buck, on episode 6. But I want to thank you guys for stopping by the channel. This is General Patton's Bushcraft and Self-Reliance School. Guys, gals, friends, family, please share and subscribe. Thank you.